Welcome to the debate.
The subject commanding our attention today is the really extraordinary series of interviews that White House Chief of Staff Susie Wiles gave to Vanity Fair magazine.
Exactly. These disclosures, delivered over nearly a year, just ripped open the conventional veil of staff discretion. They provided an unfiltered, almost raw view of the administration's inner workings, its principal, and its key officials.
Which brings us to the fundamental question we have to grapple with. Does Wiles's, this unprecedented level of candor, does it represent a vital, though unconventional, act of political transparency that offers a critical public understanding of how power operates?
Or is it, as some argue, a masterstroke of sophisticated political management, expertly engineered to consolidate her own personal authority and insulate the administration from any real accountability?
I'll be advancing the argument that this was primarily a calculated, strategic exercise designed to secure Wiles's role as the indispensable manager.
And I believe the core value of these disclosures lies in the critical public service they provide, illuminating the true function of government for every American trying to understand it. We are not just discussing a breach of decorum here. We are discussing the deliberate release of high-level information by one of the most powerful people in Washington.
Right. The publication of any extensive on-the-record conversation with a sitting White House Chief of Staff is rare, but the sheer volume and the critical nature of Wiles's remarks demand we look past the sensationalism and really examine the underlying motive and effect.
I believe the effect is clearly beneficial to the public. The value of Wiles's remarks lies directly in their unvarnished utility to citizens who are trying to understand the reality of policy and loyalty in this administration. Think about the insights typically hidden behind layers of political spin and carefully drafted statements. Wiles openly contradicted the administration's cautious public line on foreign policy, specifically on the pressure campaign in Venezuela. She stated the clear objective is to keep, quote, blowing boats up until Maduro cries uncle. Now that is an empirical, verifiable truth about the administration's foreign policy goal, a goal of clear regime pressure that the public absolutely needs to possess to accurately assess the government's actions.
Okay, on policy, I see the point.
But it goes deeper than policy, much deeper. Her candid critiques of high-ranking officials, labeling Vice President J.D. Vance a conspiracy theorist, and exposing Attorney General Pam Bondi's operational failure on the Epstein files, they reveal substantive deficiencies in competence at the highest levels of government. For American citizens trying to discern the effectiveness and integrity of their cabinet, this is gold. This verifiable truth, which Wiles herself quickly tried to spin as a hit piece without ever denying the quotes, provides a rare, necessary basis for public scrutiny and forming accurate judgments about who is truly running the country and how well.
I come at it from a different way. While the public certainly gains data points, we must remember who Susie Wiles is. She's a career political operator renowned for her relentless campaign management. To suggest that extensive, on-the-record interviews over nearly a year were accidental slips of transparency, well, it just seems implausible for a strategist of her caliber.
So you see it as a deliberate performance?
Absolutely. This was not a mistake. It was a calculated, strategic performance, what many are now calling the Wiles Doctrine. Her primary goal here was twofold: self-preservation and the establishment of her absolute, non-negotiable internal authority. And the key evidence for this calculation lies in her psychological characterization of the president. She offered this deeply personal critique, framing him as having an alcoholic's personality, and she explicitly linked this to her unique experience managing her father, the late Pat Summerall. This wasn't a public service announcement, it was a sophisticated management tool. It credentialed Wiles as the only person capable of controlling the president's big personalities. It effectively made her indispensable. So the comments were less about revealing truth to the electorate and more about asserting boundaries internally, signaling to the entire White House staff that her mandate extends to policing the behavior of everyone.
That framing, the diagnosis of the president's personality, is precisely where the internal strategy and the public good intersect, and we have to parse that operational purpose carefully.
I agree that the political technique was masterful, but let's first consider the strategy behind it. Wiles used her personal history, her father's documented struggles, as a kind of emotional shield. It allowed her to offer a quasi-clinical critique of the principal without appearing malicious or overtly disloyal. It was an intellectual Trojan horse.
And what followed was the key.
Exactly. The real genius of the move, from a managerial perspective, is what followed. When the president publicly addressed the remark, he didn't fire her. He embraced and subtly appropriated the phrase, saying he has a possessive and addictive type personality. He neutralize the critique, yes, but in doing so, he publicly validated Wiles' unique capacity to understand him. This exchange reinforced her power immensely. It demonstrated an unconventional yet profound alignment. She emerged as the only person who speaks the principal's language. This maneuver secured her status.
That's a very compelling argument about the internal optics and the resultant power dynamic. I agree that the political co-option of the phrase was a brilliant managerial strategy, yet I remain convinced that it doesn't negate the original public benefit. You're focusing on the president's reaction, but I'm focused on the original description Wiles provided, that the president operates with a view that there's nothing he can't do. Nothing. Zero. Nothing. That statement right there provides an essential, non-political lens for the public to understand his maximalist governing style, why he pushes boundaries, why he breaks from norms. This is a level of psychological insight into a powerful leader that is virtually unheard of. It is vital for voters and citizens attempting to predict executive behavior. The political maneuvering that followed, while it doesn't diminish the enduring value of that initial penetrating description.
But surely we have to consider the risk she undertook if the primary purpose was purely public disclosure. I think transparency is far more often the byproduct of ambition than altruism in Washington. Let's pivot to the operational specifics, because Wiles gave us incredibly rich detail on internal failures, and that has to be viewed through the lens of internal control.
For me, the operational critiques are where the necessary public service aspect truly shines. The utility of Wiles's remarks lies in their specific, concrete indictments of her colleagues' competence. Take the Attorney General, Pam Bondi. Wiles detailed Bondi's operational whiff on the Epstein files, noting the AG distributed binders full of nothingness and made unsupported claims about a so-called client list. Wiles publicly stated, quote, "There is no client list, and it sure as hell wasn't on her desk." This is a direct public correction of a high-ranking cabinet official misrepresenting facts.
And it wasn't just Bondi.
No, it wasn't. She called the process of closing the U.S. Agency for International Development, USAID, something that, quote, "no rational person could think was a good one." These are not abstract complaints. They are concrete indictments of administrative efficacy that directly concern the management of public resources. These truths allow the American public to judge the actual operational competency of key cabinet members outside of tightly controlled press briefings.
I am sorry, but I just don't buy that the primary motivation here was to help the public judge competency. I see these detailed critiques as a highly calculated internal power play. By publicly identifying specific operational deficiencies in the Attorney General and ideological opportunism in the Vice President, she used the Vanity Fair platform to draw firm internal boundaries. She is saying publicly that she is the only competent stabilizing force within a chaotic system. She is defining her unique value proposition. Even her willingness to criticize external actors, like calling Elon Musk an odd duck and an avowed ketamine user. Well, that serves this managerial purpose. She's trying to marginalize these chaotic external influences and reinforce her role as the necessary gatekeeper.
That argument forces us to confront the question of her survival then. If these comments were truly so damaging, truly reckless, and not part of a larger strategy, they should have resulted in her immediate dismissal. That she remains chief of staff is the real mystery.
Her survival is not a mystery. It is the greatest evidence of the calculation. It is the operational proof of the Wiles Doctrine. Her actions, including, lying to the New York Times about the Musk quotes, despite the interviewer having a recording, would normally result in immediate dismissal. Her survival confirms that in this White House, demonstrated operational competence and absolute loyalty to the president's will outweighs any cost associated with a lack of discretion. The administration tolerates her candor because she delivers results. This teaches the public a profound lesson. The strategic utility is the highest form of loyalty in this administration, not silence. She created an indispensability shield.
But that strategic utility is precisely the public good revealed, isn't it? The fact that the president tolerates this remarkable candor demonstrates the inherent instability and the practical need for a pragmatic manager in that environment. Her survival shows the public the true criteria for retaining power are competence and effective administration, not just flattery. When Vice President Vance, whom she actively criticized, defends Wiles by saying he's never seen her be disloyal to the President of the United States, he is defining loyalty not as silence, but as unwavering commitment to the principal's ultimate power. And this, for better or worse, grants her the license to speak these painful truths. The American citizen gains visibility into the true currency of political survival in this White House.
You're right that the survival aspect is key, and it shows the complexity of the Wiles Doctrine. Her public statements were immediately coupled with overwhelming praise for the president's achievements, suggesting this complex performance serves dual purposes, securing her internal position while publicly boosting the administration's overall narrative of efficacy. She is playing a long game, using transparency as a means to an end.
And that is what the American people must ultimately wrestle with. Susie Wiles' candid interviews represent a defining moment in political communications, forcing the public to reconcile internal chaos with external success. I maintain that the specific empirical revelations, the truth about the Venezuela strikes, the detailed operational critique of Bondi, the unique psychological profile of the president are invaluable to the public's understanding of government. This transparency allows the citizenry to make better informed decisions, regardless of Wiles' personal motives. We gained crucial insight, and that is a net public benefit.
And I remain convinced that Wiles performed a profoundly calculated strategic operation. She effectively used the media not for altruistic disclosure, but to perform a vital internal function, setting boundaries and justifying her role as the indispensable manager. The disclosures confirm the Wiles Doctrine, prioritizing proven operational competence over traditional political discretion.
Ultimately, whether one views Susie Wiles as an accidental truth-teller or a masterful political tactician, the resulting revelations offer an unprecedented window into the structure of power.
Right. They compel citizens to consider whether transparency, even when utilized for self-interest, can ultimately serve the greater public good by offering them the information they need to hold leaders accountable. The true nature of the Wiles Doctrine remains open to interpretation, and we certainly have more to explore.